welcome to Robot Show. I'm Hal, and this is my buddy Charge. We're here today with Jessica Kerr, also known as Jessitron. Jessitron, how you doing?
I'm great, Hal, Charge. It's so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So you've done tons of stuff, from FP to OO to back end to front end. So what have you been up to lately? What's loaded in the front of your RAM?
Oh, gosh. These days, I am super into development automation. Like, as developers, what we do is we automate other people's work, right? And Clearly, that's very productive because they pay us well for it. So how far could we go in automating our own work?
So are you talking about, like, tooling for daily tasks and things?
Yeah, daily tasks. Like, I get tired of going to get the build log from Travis. And so I want to write something that's going to fetch the build log for me and just give it to me in Slack with the notification of the failed build.
Right on. That sounds really useful. I use both of those all the time. I love that it's named Travis, because when you get mad, you're like, oh, Travis.
Bad robot.
So what was the last project you were working on there?
Oh, last weekend, I finally published this blog post that's been in my head about promises in JavaScript and TypeScript, really. I've been using a lot of TypeScript. And I like it because it uses Yarn and Legos.
Oh, interesting. So how does Yarn and Legos help you learn?
Okay. Well, frankly, the Legos are pretty gratuitous. I just build them to represent processing. But the Yarn is important. I use the Yarn to represent a path of execution. And I'm deliberately avoiding the word thread. That's a technical thing, and it's totally not what I'm talking about here.
Right.
I'm talking about, a series of stuff the program is going to do. So, if you've got a script, maybe a node script, and you run it, you get one path of execution for free. So we'll use this Yarn to represent that. And so if you
Yep.
hold on to this. Here. You don't have to hold too tightly to this one because it'll just hang out, and this is your main path of execution. And if you only want to do one thing at a time, then that's good enough. But if you're like a web server and you want to serve multiple requests, that's never going to be good enough.
Yeah, you'd be blocking the main thread and everything.
Right. So what you want to do then is use promises.
Okay.
Hal, do you always keep your promises?
Well, I'm programmed to, so I guess I have to.
Okay. Well, sometimes I don't, and it can be a problem in my programs. Because see, if I call a function that returns a promise, what that function is doing, it starts executing on my main path of execution here. But then as soon as it creates this promise, it that's a technical term, splits off another path of execution. Now, because this is Node, only one of these is going to run at a time. But while this one's waiting for files, this one can keep going. And so the difference between a promise and a callback is a promise returns immediately, and it gives you back the end of the path, the end of this string, okay?
Okay.
So you don't have to decide ahead of time what's going to happen after you read the file, because it gives you the end of the string that's eventually going to produce the content of the file. And every time you call .then on the promise, it's like you took another piece of string and tied it on to the end. So eventually the content of the file will fall into this orange piece of code, and that will execute. So now, here, you take this.
Oh my gosh, this is a lot of yarn. Okay, I got it. Now what?
Keep that string. Don't lose it.
Okay.
Because there's more than just the data that can come out of that string. If the file's not present or something, you're not going to get the data. You're going to get an exception. And that exception is going to pop right off the end of that string.
So what do I do?
The trick is you want to tie off the end neatly with a catch clause that will handle the exception, and that way it won't burn you. And at that point, as long as you've handled the data, you've handled the web request that it was listening to maybe, then you can let go of the promise and you can let it be.
Oh, well, thank goodness.
Yeah. And when all your strings, all your paths of execution have nothing else to do, then your program will exit.
Cool. Well, thanks for that, dare I say, crafty promise analogy. So you've done a lot of speaking on a number of subjects. Any cool stories from your travels?
So my favorite thing that ever happened at a conference was in Budapest. And in Budapest, it was a craft conf. And one night, there was the conference party, and then like there was a bunch of speakers went out to dinner. And then after that, I'm walking home. And it's like 2 a.m., but I'm not actually ready to go home. But I'm in Budapest, right? So I'm like pretty thrilled to be walking along the street. And then somebody comes up to me and they say, "Hey, are you Jessitron?" And I was like, "Why, yes." And they said, "Do you want to go to the club with us?" And I was like,
Budapest
"Yeah, I want to go to the club with you."
Wow. So what makes it different from an American club?
Oh, it was actually really awesome because it was in a really, really old building, of course. And there were all kinds of different rooms, and it was like a maze, and every room was different and had different music, and it was pretty exciting. We tried to get in that club again the next day, which was a Friday.
Yeah.
No, lines around the block. That was not happening. So I was extra lucky. It was a Thursday, and it wasn't crowded. Oh, it was fantastic. It was so fun.
Wow, it sounds like quite an experience. So, let's change the pace. Do you ever pair program with humans?
With humans, yes. Yes, when I don't have a robot pair program to write the code for me. I do a lot of
Right.
pairing, and almost all of it's remote.
Well, that can be a challenge. Do you use any software for that?
Zoom is the best. Zoom because you can see both the other person's screen and their face.
Ah, so you can see if they're struggling.
Or if they're looking at you at all, yeah. Right, yeah, so like screen share doesn't is not exclusive with video, which is really nice. But with remote pairing, see, you could do it too, and you would have your robot interface to the computer, because I bet you don't have to use a keyboard like we do,
Right, I just think it and it happens.
because you think in computer.
But I mean, you too, though, right? I mean, like Jessitron, is that like cyborg or android? What kind of robot is that?
The pretend kind.
Oh, God, geez. Charge, did you set off the intruder alert? There's no need for that. Turn it off. Gosh, I'm sorry about that. You just got a little excited. We just got confused because you've been so prolific in your career and everything. We just think the Jessitron. Anyway, let's move on. So last question. What do you think about the divide between academia and industry?
My favorite conference is Strange Loop, which is
Oh,
here in
yeah.
St. Louis. And one thing I like about it is there's a fair number of researchers talking about their research, as well as a lot of people talking about industry, and then we all talk to each other, and that's really productive.
So y'all just get together and wax philosophic about code.
Yeah, we totally do. Especially at the City Museum with the party, and then there's all this art we can climb. It's amazing. But one of the things in academia, there's like two sides of it, because you can study something abstract like programming languages, or you can study software development, which is a totally different thing, right? Because that involves
right.
people. Well, one of the researchers whose work I think is really interesting is Dr. Miriam Petrie. So I've got this book here that she wrote with a couple other people, and she and her co-author, Dr. Vanderhoek, are going to be on our podcast, Greater Than Code, next week, which I'm excited about. But she's got this tiny little book about software design, and it's about things that expert software developers do.
Like habits and things?
You'd think this was fluff because it's so concise, but it's based on a lot of data gathering and scientific research and analysis that Dr. Petrie and her partners have done in academia.
Well, that sounds useful. I'll have to pick that book up. So any parting thoughts before we go?
While you're developing software, if you ever feel stupid, that's not you, that's normal. That's like me all day. There's always stuff that I don't know how to do. Yesterday, I wrote a TeamCity plugin, and I'm like, Java, it's been years. How do I make JSON again?
Oh boy, yeah.
There's so much to know. And in order to learn new stuff, you have to forget old stuff. So then you're going to have to learn that again, which it's always faster to learn the second time. Feel feeling stupid is normal and it's an opportunity, and just run with it. And don't think you're like a bad developer for it.
Well, that's some great advice. Well, it was a pleasure chatting with you. I encourage everyone to check out Jessitron's talks and the podcast Graded in Code. Okay, see you next time.
Thank you, Hal. Bye, Charge.